that we can continue the series on the conscience of man. And in today's teaching, we want to have a look specifically at the role of the conscience. And we'll have a look at the role of the conscience as it pertains to the unbeliever, and then bring that across to following up on the role of the conscience as it pertains to the believer. So the opening scripture we want to look at today is in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2. The scripture says, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron. Now, this is pertaining to Christians in the context, and we'll have a look at it later in this teaching. But the same principle applies to unbelievers as well. And we've said that the way that the unbelievers, well, the conscience works exactly the same with believers and unbelievers alike. It doesn't function differently when it comes to believers once we're born again. Our conscience remains exactly the same in function as it did when we were unsaved. And so the way that the conscience works is that as we are obedient to our conscience, well, then we don't strengthen the conscience as such, but we do not do any damage to the conscience. But the more we disobey our conscience, the more we then weaken our conscience. Now, what happens is that with regards to unbelievers, their conscience, they can either obey or disobey their conscience. Now, when they obey their conscience remains strong. When they disobey their conscience, what happens is they weaken their conscience a little bit more. And in fact, the Bible talks about wounding of the conscience. Now, it can get to the point where the conscience of the individual is wounded to that effect that this takes place, where the scripture says that their consciences are seared with a hot iron. Now, if you have a look at the effect of what a hot iron does to a natural body, think about an animal that gets branded with a hot iron. What happens is that the nerve endings where that hot iron has been placed on that hide of that animal are completely destroyed, and they can no longer feel anything in that place where that hot iron was branded. And so that's exactly the same, and now that's the analogy of how the conscience is affected. Once we wound our conscience consistently in any area of our lives, what happens is the conscience then becomes completely seared in that area eventually. And so that allows the person to then continue doing what they're doing, and their conscience has no more feeling. Their conscience can no longer affect their decisions that they make. And so that's how unbelievers can walk in this life